going to broadcast.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Workinar Wednesday. Today, the topic is the job search during COVID-19. And I want to do a few housekeeping things before we start the presentation. First of all, remember that the presentation is being recorded and that your microphones are muted. There is closed captioning available, so just click on the CC if you need closed captioning. We will be answering any questions that you may have, so use the Q&A section and we will answer those questions toward the end of the presentation. So we'll try to get through all of them in the time that we can. And so with the sort of housekeeping getting done here, I would like to introduce you to our Workinar Wednesday, the job search in COVID-19, and our speaker is Christine Nisley. She is an EHE alumni. She is from Fashion and Retail Studies. I've worked with Christine for a very long time as a student, as a recruiter, and she works with Bath and Body Works as a merchant. And Christine, I'm going to hand off to you now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you all for participating. I think Nancy covered most of my introduction. I was just going to share that I am originally from Pittsburgh and really came to Columbus for Ohio State and the retail here in Columbus. And my family lives in Worthington. And I am also a member of the advisory board for FRS. So that has been a great networking and growth for me to continue, beyond the classroom in my career. So moving on to our agenda for today, we're going to cover networking. We're going to cover tips for describing your skills, experience, and traits, where to look and how to organize your job search, the importance of patience and flexibility during your search, and then finally I'll wrap it up with a quick little recap and we'll get into Q&A. I hope that I can break down some difficult topics into simple actions and ideas to take you forward on your journey. There will be survey questions along the way, so please be an active participant either in the chat or in the Q&A at the end of the session. Next slide. So building your network. The next slide will show us the definition of networking. So it is the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. Toy Story is a big thing at my house. I have 2 young kids, so you can see Woody and Buzz there saying networking everywhere. Always on. So next slide. some opportunities to network, because for me, this was a very hard topic to break down as I was a student in recent grad. So finding that who do you know already? Maybe some family, maybe some friends. Who do they know? Really utilize that 7 degrees of separation. Maybe it's not someone you know directly, but through a friend of a friend, I bet you know someone in the industry you're trying to get into. Attend events with professionals in the industry. Who do you want to be, and get in the room with them? So even if it's a virtual room, how do you get yourself there? And beyond just, putting your document there, putting your resume or cover letter or email, how do you get yourself there? Find the companies that hold the events, find groups, who were you a part of in high school or college? Where are those passion points? And, how do you join those groups even as an adult and a young graduate? Attend virtual talks like you're doing today. So congratulations to everyone who's participating today. That's the first step. And then continue to network in all directions. So all of the above. Next slide. So this will be our first survey question. Who did research on me prior to today? And be honest, it's anonymous. I don't know. I'm not grading. But select, yep, you're an overachiever. You did your homework. Nope. Or be active now and do a quick search on me and see, what you can learn. Maybe there's a connection that we have already, somebody that we know in common, or, maybe you know someone who's worked at one of the companies that I've worked at before. So we'll just take a second to get those results in. Okay, so 70% nope. There's 20% that are starting to explore now. And I would encourage you all at the end of this call to definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Just do a little explore and see, maybe there's 3 degrees of separation between us and someone else. So going on to the next slide. Once you're in, here's some tips to really engage. So the first one would be research the keynote. Know a little bit about who you're going to listen to and maybe some of their background and where they're coming from. Connect with fellow attendees. Be brave enough to ask a question in the chat function. So in this virtual world, that's really how you start breaking the ice. Utilize LinkedIn private message if that's more comfortable for you, and invite someone for virtual coffee. Can you see the list prior to the event of attendees? How do you understand who else is in the room in this virtual world? When you attend events, demonstrate that you are listening and learning. So when you engage and join in that chat, make sure you're demonstrating, connecting the dots and listening and applying. So using this webinar as an example, let's all, break the ice and start networking. You guys are here, now let's engage. So you're in a safe space, we're all EHE family, we're all here with a unified goal for tips on job searching. So I would love to invite someone to be brave enough to start the chat and share your email or your LinkedIn profile. We aren't able to share the list of attendees, so the only way to know who's in the room with us is to chat. So please share your name in the chat, and maybe a way to get in touch. Maybe there's a recent networking event that you've attended that you could share with everyone else in the room via the chat. Maybe there's people in the room that that you don't realize are in the same forum. So please get that chat going as I keep going through the presentation. You really have nothing to lose by sharing. So some best practices to make connections. So networking isn't just about yourself. It isn't just about what the person can do for you. What are you trying to learn? Inviting someone to share with them or share with you about themselves and about their career will typically allow someone to really open up to you. And then, as you listen to them, maybe they'll reveal their needs to you. Maybe they'll share a work challenge or, a personal goal for themselves that you can start, to make connections and offer to help them. It takes 7 touch points to develop a relationship. So that's a lot for somebody that is new in your life. That's an overtime to build a relationship. Meeting someone for coffee is just one connect point. How do you really build that relationship? I think you'll be surprised. People really want to help you succeed. People love to talk about themselves and what they know. So really just opening up that conversation and trying to slow it down from the quick kind of hi bye. How do you really start to get someone to open up to you? Thank you for everyone who's joining in the chat. I really appreciate that. We can go on to the next slide. Our next topic is really about describe yourself. So here we're going to get into the elevator speech, and again, focusing on the definition to ground ourselves, what it is. It communicates who you are, what you're looking for, and how you can benefit a company or organization. So we had a student submit an example to us. So we'll see if Cassie's on to speak to it, or I can read through it.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. My name is Cassandra Dulay. I'm currently a junior studying fashion retail at The Ohio State University. I have been in retail for the past 3 years as a sales associate, and I have gained skills in leadership, problem solving, and organization. At my job, I have run into situations where there are unorganized sections of the store, and I take initiative to strategically organize and place where merchandise goes. This experience has given me the drive and passion to pursue a career in merchandising, and I'm qualified given my education and my current experience at the retail level.
Thank you. So I really think this is a very strong example. I would say if I, was pushed to critique it in any way, I would say that you could lose the sentence. So if we go to the next slide, it shows some edits where I think you could lose the sentence where you describe and identify what the actual skills are. And I think you just emphasize, you resolved situations. That demonstrates that you are a problem solver. You took the initiative to strategically place the merchandise. That to me shows leadership. So instead of telling me that you have leadership and problem solving, demonstrating it to me and allowing me to get to that conclusion almost allows me to believe it more than you telling me. But I think this is an incredibly strong example. Do you have any questions, Cassie, before we move on?
In my professional development class, we talked about how we could have a call to action at the end of our speech. I wasn't sure how to put that in there. What is a good way to do that?
Yeah, I think that's great feedback, because if we go to the next slide, it includes some best practices, and definitely, including one ask or leaving them wanting more is definitely a way to keep that conversation going, right? Somebody's, if we're literally in the elevator with a VP and you give them this, you don't want them to open the doors and walk away. You want to be invited to keep going. So posing a question, the first thing that comes to mind for me is something that you're curious about. Maybe it depends on who you're talking to, like sharing, I'm curious, on the sales floor, what impact did that have? Or I'm curious about the future season, what if we moved the floor, rearranged the floor in this way? Having a proposal and asking a question, I think is a great way to continue that dialogue. For me, I was curious what retailer you worked at. That would be my question after reading your elevator pitch and, in an effort to keep the conversation going.
Okay.
So just to hit on a couple other best practices. So it's short, it's not super long, it's 2 to 4 sentences, 30 seconds, like it says, like an elevator ride, demonstrating strengths and one ask. Include your passion and motivation. It's easy to talk about what you're passionate about. It's a commercial and not a biography, and leave them wanting more. So we can go on to the next slide. So wanted to pause here to make sure that you're presenting your best self. We are in a very unique macro environment, so want to make sure you're taking self-care. So in job search, it's important to be confident and remain at the top of your game. Be kind to yourself. Do not compare yourself to others. The job search is a tough process, and take care of yourself both physically and mentally. I think you're going to show up during your job search the best when you are taking care of yourself. So focus on what you can control. I know it can be tough when you're receiving rejections. I've been there, but celebrate the small stuff, you know, take small wins where you can, and surround yourself with a supportive group to help you on your journey. No one struggles the same personally or professionally. This could be one of the most stressful moments in your life, so make it manageable for yourself and not this impossible, you know, mountain to climb. It's understandable to have feelings, you know, of being scared or frustrated, but it's important to take care of yourself and, you know, stay focused on what you're passionate about and your end goal. Okay, so let's dive deeper on the next slide into your actual search. So another survey question, if everyone could share with me, what is the hardest part of the job search virtually? So I listed a couple options here to fill in on the poll. Where to start the job search? Was it networking? Is it organizing your search? Or is it explaining your experience? And if it's not listed here, please share it again in the chat. I would love to hear what you think is the hardest point, and, you know, maybe address it in the Q&A session at the end. Okay, explaining your experience. So I would love to dive deeper on that in the Q&A session if anyone wants to submit a specific question. Hopefully we've addressed networking a little bit. We'll jump into where to search, and then it feels like everyone's pretty organized, so we'll breeze over that. Thank you. Okay, so getting into where to look on the next slide. I just listed some of the tools that I have been familiar with: Handshake, LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor. Google is a resource. And then I don't know how familiar everyone is, but you can save your searches so that you are getting an email alert and you don't have to go out and search every time. So explore that. And then of course, I think it's obvious, but the university, you know, tools like today, are you utilizing every single resource the university has consistently? I, you know, definitely leaned on the university, and that was one of the reasons that I went to OSU, was their huge network and resources. So please use all of the above in a combination consistently to help with your search. Okay, next slide. Then I want to hit on, as you're in your job search, maybe you're looking outside of your degree, or maybe you graduated with a degree, you have a couple years of experience, and you're looking for something else. This for me is definitely a benefit. So use this to your advantage. If you have a broad, you know, or vague degree and it's not so specific. What are your personal interests? You know, definitely when you're going to pivot, I think pivot with a purpose and be passionate about it. You know, I want to hire someone who cares about what they're doing and who they're doing it for. So applying to companies that you know, personally connect with, or, you know, maybe their values are something that you admire, you know, having that connection will really help you through the job search and job application process. Where do you have the most experience? What company is successful right now? I think that was something I definitely did in my last job search. Was, you know, I worked in retail. It was a tough climate. I had worked for a company that had filed bankruptcy. So I changed my focus to, you know, brands that I wanted to wear, to brands who were successful in the environment, and reading their stock prices and researching the company's trend, and applying to companies who were successful. Looking at who is hiring, you know, maybe your certain industry isn't growing at the moment, but other industries are, you know, how do you pivot and look at who's growing? And then focus on your skill set, not the task. So as you're looking at, you know, changing or looking at different directions, all soft skills are transferable. So leadership, communication, those all apply across different roles. So don't focus on your specific task that you did in your last role, but really the skills that you built from that role. Okay, next slide. I think everyone's pretty organized, but some things that helped me was to cast a wide net. So, cast a wide net while you're job searching, scan the environment, and then refine and apply to your favorites. Like I said, passion will go a long way. So starting with your favorite brands or companies is definitely the first place to go. Get your foot in the door. So understand, who your contacts are and what companies they work for, and follow up. Apply to your second tier if you have already done your first tier and haven't heard back, and follow up. And then these feel a little outdated, but these are how I organized my job search, was through a binder, email folders, and a little black book of contacts. And then of course, Alf with his I love organizing. Okay, if you have lost your job and have been laid off due to the economic environment, be honest, and you can address it directly. I mean, I don't think you're alone in this situation. It's relatable, but then be quick to be optimistic of the future, and have a smooth transition into telling them why you are such a great candidate. You don't want to be stuck dwelling on, how you lost your last role. And this is really the opportunity for a fresh start to pave the path to who you want to be. This is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. It could be similar to when you graduate high school and came to campus. It's kind of that fresh start, and you can kind of be who you want to be. I worked for The Limited when they closed their stores of December of 2016, and worked for Rue 21 when they filed bankruptcy. So that was a pretty tough thing to navigate. But I was able to go into job interviews and share that. And it was honestly a community of Columbus retail that really rallied behind all of the people who were laid off, and tried to find the best placements where they could in neighboring companies. And, my job search to my current role took 7 months. It takes time. I interviewed with 3 of the L Brands companies before getting a placement at Bath & Body Works. So sometimes it feels long while you're in it, but having faith that you'll end in the right role with the right team at the end of the day, and having that positive outlook is really important. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. In the meantime, if you feel like you've done your job applications, you've tried to follow up, you're waiting for the HR recruiter to call you back, there are more things you can do to continue moving forward. So gaining experience and build your skill set. So whether you're listening to a masterclass or podcasts or reading something, continue to move forward. Volunteering is a great opportunity. You always want to have something that you've done recently that you can speak to, in an interview, or even networking and having coffee with someone. You always want to be able to share a recent experience. So network, number 4, change your angle or remain open to alternative opportunities. Keeping open to maybe what's on the edge, maybe you're focused on, the opportunity or the direct path in front of you, but maybe something is opening on either side, that it's not directly what you're applying to, but still being open to other opportunities you're invited to. Read a book. I've had a lot of interview questions. That is, what have you read recently? Continue to network, continue to keep that going. Take any exploratory interviews. So even if you don't get the role, you've now met, new hiring managers and a new HR recruiter, and, maybe you've gotten to see their office or hear more about their brand. So that's all new knowledge that now you've gained, even if you didn't get the role. And then continue to follow up. If you haven't heard from someone in 2 weeks, I think it's fair to, pop in their inbox and, remind them of where you are in your search. Okay, and then what will set you apart? So hopefully these are some things you can do to stand out. So be undeniable. Someone said this to me once, and I was so taken aback by it, but I think it's the right mentality. It can be competitive. It can be hard not to compare yourself to others, but be the best candidate you can be on that day. So COVID is a unique environment for everyone and impact to everyone's business. So a lot of businesses are reinventing. How can you be a part of that? How do you show up with a positive attitude? I read somewhere that creative thinkers are going to build a way out, you know, and coming from retail, half of our world is very creative. So come with a creative solution, come with ideas, lean into change. And that is definitely someone that you want on your team. Always have a question. So be able to ask a series of good questions. You know, maybe that's how you end your elevator speech, is with a question. Show interest in the person you are talking to, you know, ask them something, you know, to tell them about or tell you about their career or what they've done recently to learn from. Be an investigative journalist. So having those really good questions, which we're all going to have in the Q&A session here in a couple minutes. Be a team player. So as you're networking, bring others along, showcase your network and your ability to motivate others to join. Make a movement. That definitely shows up in a candidate, you know, when you have a wide network, when you're helping others, when you've recently volunteered and you can share a book you read, you know, and you're connecting all of those dots and bringing that to the table. So then our next slide is really just wrapping up. So to reflect back on networking, find the in, engage, and build the connections. Present your best self, you know, having that elevator speech ready and taking care of yourself. Organize your search. So search, refine, apply, follow up, and describe the skill set, not the task. And then finally, keep going, always doing something to further educate yourself and explore, you know, in all directions. So either what you're going towards or, you know, explore. The job search can be difficult and it can be stressful, but the tasks are really quite simple when you break them down. So consistent follow-up and patience, and the right opportunity will present itself. That was all I had to present. I want to thank everyone. I see a lot of participation in the chat. And thank you all for coming today. I wish we were all in real life, in real person, live together, but this is a virtual world we are navigating. So this is a part of our new climate. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Thank you so much. Do we have some questions that Christy can answer? If you could put it in the Q&A, I will share them with her and we'll kind of go from there. Well, I'm gonna, oh, let's see, there's a chat. Oh, here's a question for you. How many questions do you think is good to ask at the end of an interview?
I like that because I think that's coming from a how many is too many. So I'm pausing to think. I would say maybe having 5 ready, assuming that you ask 3. I think it kind of depends on where your dialogue goes. You know, if they're, you know, I'm assuming there are good questions where you're curious and the answer is going to be more than a word. You know, it's not, where's the cafeteria? You know, they're more curious about the business or the company structure. So I would say maybe a list of 5, and if you get to all of them, but I would assume that 3 would be kind of a 15-minute fruitful dialogue with who's interviewing you.
Okay, we have another question. Do you have tips for the introduction in your cover letter?
Yeah. I think for me it is, you know, something that's going to stand out and be memorable. You know, so in your email, you know, how do you, I think I go back to passion, you know, like how is there something that I connect, like for me, it's Cassie and visual merchandising, right? Like how do I have a little nugget of something unique that I'm going to connect to her name or his name? So how do you put something that you're passionate about that is unique to you in your cover letter so that then I'm intrigued to open more and read more about your experience and that you're memorable?
Okay, thanks. We have another question. This person is asking, what are some of the best ways, tips or tricks to brand yourself as a professional and an expert in your field, especially if you have imposter syndrome?
I don't know if I know what imposter syndrome is. Do you, Nancy? Can you explain?
It's like you have the skills and the experience, but you feel like you're an imposter applying for it because you're just not confident.
Okay. Okay. So the original question was, how do you brand yourself?
Yes, as a professional and an expert in the field, are there tips or tricks to do that?
Sorry, I'm just reflecting to make sure I'm understanding the question. I think if you have, like, if I'm thinking about like looking at an application, if I can read through the requirements and it's like check, 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 you know, I can do all of that. I guess I'm interpreting it as not coming across as cocky, but coming across as equipped. And, you know, how do you relate your experience, again, to maybe demonstrate to someone that you can do the job without telling them you can do the job? Does that make sense? Like, someone's favorite interview question is always like, tell me an example of, or, you know, tell me about a time, you know. So having those quick stories that you can, you know, spout off that demonstrate the skill set to allow me to make the conclusion on my own, I think would allow you to be that expert or show up well. I think I also go back to the kind of in the meantime slide. You know, if this is truly a passion of yours, you know, and you volunteer and you're a part of a group and, you know, you work here on the weekends, and you've read this book by some leader in the industry, you know, how do you come across as that well-rounded candidate that feels authentic to what you're applying towards? Nancy, do you think that addresses what someone was asking?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Are there any other questions? I'll just give them a couple minutes here.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question while someone's thinking about it. Can you share kind of how important it is to being able to share your transferable skills, you know, during an interview, or what's the best way to, you know, use those? So maybe you work at Starbucks and, you know, maybe you're like an assistant manager or something like that, but you're applying for a job in retail.
Yeah.
For example, how would you use your transferable skills or share that with the employer?
Absolutely. That for me is key. It's much less about what you did, you know, or what the role entailed. I think it's much more about what you learned and the skills you're bringing to the current opportunity. So I would almost solely focus on those soft skills. You know, how quickly were you promoted to that role? How many people did you manage? You know, describe those leadership qualities. You know, being on time, being prompt, being responsible for money, you know, all of those things. Managing, you know, stressful situations. I'm trying to think of what else, like, you know, how did you solve problems, you know, in my store, you know, whether there were personal conflicts among the associates, or whether they were professional challenges, like I was out of this quantity and I put this on sale, you know, how were you agile? You know, how did you have a solution-based focus? You know, I would speak to all of those soft skills and have those quick, again, story examples of how you turned a negative into a positive.
Thank you. I have another question.
Okay.
Another one didn't pop up, but I have a question. You had mentioned in your presentation that, you know, you went, you had a job and you lost it because they went bankrupt, and then it took 7 months for you to get a job. Can you sort of, what was the hardest part for you during that process, and how did you sort of keep on path, and how did you stay positive?
Yes.
But we all know that's very stressful.
Yes, I would say it was probably the most stressed I'd ever been in my life. And I had been married the year before and thought planning a wedding was stressful, or buying a house, but losing your job is stressful. But I think for me, I was not alone. You know, it was economic impact. It was not, you know, my behavior that caused me to lose my job. So it was relatable, you know, and I work in retail. It's volatile. It is not always consistent. You know, historically, you can go back and look at waves, you know, depending on, you know, apparel, which is what I was in, you know, had great waves with peaks and valleys. So I think what helped me stay positive was that I was not alone. I had a lot of close coworkers, you know, kind of navigate it with me, and it didn't happen overnight. We knew business was tough. You know, as a merchant, I stopped buying 3 weeks before we closed. I knew things were not going well. So, you know, there was a lot of community support. HR was very supportive. You know, other HR recruiters who I had, you know, spoken to, because by that time it was my third company that I had worked for, you know, started reaching out. And so I had an interview the Monday after we were let go on Friday, fortunately. But that only started the 7-month job search, you know, and it was hard not to look next to my other coworkers who were getting jobs. And I actually took a job with Route 21 in Pittsburgh. So I was commuting with my family or whatever. It was complicated, but took a job in Pittsburgh because I felt, you know, only so long did I want to file unemployment. So I made that decision. You know, I took the job for experience. It was not my dream job, you know, but that is something that you have to navigate. And then they filed bankruptcy. And that was also very scary for me because I was like, nope, not where I wanted to be professionally. And that's where I think I shared earlier, I really started beyond, you know, up to that point, I had just looked at my job as an assistant merchant and looked at my boss, you know, and maybe two roles higher than that. Did I like everybody? Could I work with everybody? Okay, cool. The brand's cool. I want to work for them. But then working with 2 companies, both Limited who closed and then Rue who filed, and there were a lot of other companies who were filing, I was like, hold on, I got to get out of this cycle. So I really started doing research, which I think for me was a maturity moment for myself to look beyond my current job. What ship did I want to attach myself to, you know, and looking at stock prices and reading earnings calls, which honestly were a little over my head at the moment, but doing a lot of business analytic reading that I only understood half of it. But to really try to get my hands around what company was performing well, which was Under Armour and Big Lots for me. And so I interviewed with them, and will not forget that the guy who interviewed me at Big Lots had shared that he had worked for 2 other companies who had closed. So it was relatable. It was something to talk about and acknowledge, you know, but then having a positive outlook to say, look, I'm pivoting from apparel to light bulbs. Okay, had never done research on selling light bulbs, but was prepared for the interview and made, you know, that transition in the conversation.
Okay, thank you. And we did get a question here.
Okay.
How do you explain or navigate your gap in employment in a positive way when you're interviewing for a new position?
Yeah. That's definitely something to navigate. So thank you for asking the question. I think for me, you know, I would almost want to understand a little bit more, you know, maybe honestly understanding what the gap was, or how long it is. You know, I think you can acknowledge it. I would acknowledge it honestly without going into too many details, if that makes sense. And again, I think it's more about the smooth transition, you know, not having that awkward pause, having that transition into why you're excited for the role today. You know, I took this time for myself, for my family, you know, for personal matters, you know, I don't know. I think being honest about what it was, but then saying, you know, and I'm excited for this role to get back into this industry. I have this passion for this that I missed while I was gone, you know, and having that smooth transition into what you're excited for and why you're the best candidate. Does that help answer? It can be sticky, so I would practice it. As corny as that sounds, like I would say it, I would practice it. It's like your elevator speech. I would be able to just smoothly, fluidly acknowledge it and keep it moving.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Okay.
Thank you all for sharing. I'm just going back and reading through the chat. Thank you for being brave enough to share a little bit about yourself and a little introduction to the room. And please connect with me or chat me on LinkedIn if you do have questions or would rather, have a smaller conversation. So thank you, everyone.
Yes, and Christy, I want to say thank you so much for, putting together this awesome presentation for our students and our alumni. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone to log in and listen and ask great questions today. So again, I want to thank you for the participating in the Workinar. And if you have any questions, as we had mentioned before, you can contact Christine or you can contact myself. I put my email in the chat if you want to make an appointment. I'm happy to talk to you. And I just want to remind you at the end of this presentation, you will be directed to a survey to take. We would love to hear your feedback on how we did and what we could do better the next time. And there should be also a link to the October Workinar. So again, thank you very much. And hopefully you have a great day, and we'll see you in October, in the end of October.